The Story of the Pledge of Allegiance, Memories of an American Schoolboy. Times change. Nothing stays the same forever except the eternal word of the true and living God of the Bible. Looking back on the last 30 years or so, it cannot be denied that there have been some sweeping changes in morality, but not so much for the better. When I was a kid back in the mid-1960s, simple things we did made a very big difference. We got a better foundation than today's kids do. We were filled with pride in being a citizen of the greatest country on earth, the United States of America, and we had pride in our faith and beliefs. That is not so much the case any longer. Two things we did daily in school at the very beginning of each day set my generation truly apart from the current one. These made us stronger in faith and in national pride. Those two things, of course, were prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Every morning began the same with these two traditions. The Pledge of Allegiance has a very interesting and somewhat surprising history. It was for me anyways. But before I get into that, those of you who remember it, take a moment with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance right now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. Oftentimes, we would also follow this with not only prayer, but by singing "My Country 'Tis of Thee." Just for the sake of the following lyrics, and I'll save you from the torture of hearing me singing them. And I'm only going to do the first verse. I will try to remember to put the entire lyrics in the description section. But the first, I'm sure most of us of my age anyways remember. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. But let me get back on track. It is my understanding that most schools no longer recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and they do not pray. Why? Well, it would not be right to force God and national pride on anyone, especially with all the immigrants that we have coming in now. They want to bring their own way, and it is not politically correct. What a crock. Well, a crock full of you-know-what. Once God was collectively kicked out of the schools because of the actions of a few idiots, the morals of the nation have plummeted. Our moral fabric has been torn asunder. Many people believe, and I did until recently, that the Pledge of Allegiance dates back to the time of the American Revolution and our founding fathers, but that's not so. It was created as a promotional gimmick, actually, by a magazine in 1892. As the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage to the New World approached in 1892, the U.S. made plans to celebrate the event with a huge World's Fair in Chicago, the Columbian Exposition. Editors at the Youth's Companion magazine jumped on the bandwagon and became sponsors of the National Public School celebration for Columbus Day 1882, and their goal was to get every public school in the U.S. to honor the occasion by raising a U.S. flag and reciting a salute. The man assigned to write it was an editor named Francis Bellamy, a former Baptist minister who had been forced out of his Boston church for delivering socialist sermons. The pledge was written and recited by an estimated 10 million schoolchildren on that day in 1892, but it's a slightly different version than we know now. It went, I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Scholar John W. Baer wrote, the pledge Bellamy wrote quickly became part of America's culture. Then in 1923 and 1924, the National Flag Conference, under the leadership of the American Legion and the Daughters of the American Revolution, changed the pledge's words to my flag to the United States of America. In 1954, Congress, after a campaign by the Knights of Columbus, added the words under God to the pledge, and the pledge thus became both a patriotic oath and a public prayer. The original author, Bellamy, became bitter towards church in his later life, and his granddaughter said he would have resented the second change, referring to God. This is the story behind the national tradition that decades of schoolchildren recited and believed, and were uplifted by and filled with pride in self, in nation, and filled with love of God. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find a schoolchild that would even know the words. How incredibly, utterly sad.